Hey everybody, this is Jonathan James with Hope. And listen, I am so thankful that one thing that we have had the privilege of being able to do over the last year and a half is be able to connect with each other online. This pandemic has been difficult for everyone who's gone through it, but look, we have been able to have really some amazing live experiences together where we've been able to learn from each other and learn from some experts in different specialties to grow in the knowledge and information that we have so that we can get continually better as people living with rare and chronic illness. Listen, living with a bleeding disorder myself, I know so many times that there's many things that go unspoken that we deal with, such as pain, mental health, challenges in being able to understand new treatments and things of that nature. But the one thing that we really need the most is to be able to connect with each other and grow in our relationships with other people who've experienced maybe the same things that we've experienced. And so I encourage you, whenever possible, please, please, please try to get involved with a live event experience where you can connect with others and network with those people who've actually walked the road that you have. Whether they're older or younger, we all have something to contribute to each other to help build a stronger lifestyle and learn from each other's experience. But one of these moments that we had together recently was at one of our events where we got a chance to listen from Mark Zaturka, who is an expert on understanding cannabis and the treatment for alternative therapies related to pain management. He gave us some great information on this, and whatever side of the road that you're on with this, whether you're for it, against it, or somewhere in the middle, I think this would be a great opportunity for you to get some information on how to be able to understand all the dynamics that go on. And so we were thrilled to be able to provide this opportunity, and I want to turn it over now to that session so you can watch and learn and get to know some more information. We hope you enjoy this. And look, check out our website regularly for updates both on events as well as upcoming opportunities to get involved in some capacity. And we'll do our best to continue to provide you with the best information that we can to help you grow successfully with a bleeding disorder. So let's jump in now and get to hear what everyone is learning from Mark, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. So we're going to talk a little bit about hemophilia and joint health and how cannabis can be an effective tool to help improve your joints and overall health when living with hemophilia. I think Jonathan just pretty much went over my whole bio, so I don't need to spend much time on that. I was an owner of a specialty pharmacy that specialized in hemophilia for about 15 years prior to getting into the cannabis industry. I'm the leader of the Blood Brotherhood groups here in New England. That's about it. I got two beautiful twin daughters, Eliana and Kobe, who are 7 years old now. And that's probably everything you need to know about me. Quick disclaimer, I don't give medical advice. I'm certainly not a physician. I'm definitely not your treating physician. So if you are interested in making any changes to your medical care, please consult your licensed physician and qualified health providers before doing so. And also another quick disclaimer is cannabis has not been analyzed or approved by the FDA. And there are limited information on side effects of cannabis, and there may be some health risks associated with using cannabis. And cannabis should always be kept away from your children and pets. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's a neurosurgeon and a correspondent at CNN, who was very anti-cannabis for a number of years, not too long ago came out and said marijuana doesn't have a high potential for abuse and that there are very legitimate medical applications. In fact, sometimes marijuana is the only thing that works. So we've certainly seen a shift over the past several years from using cannabis being more stigmatized and demonized to now finally people are understanding the real benefits of using cannabis, both medically and recreationally. Today we'll be talking mostly medically wise. So what is cannabis? There's a lot of different names of cannabis. Two main ones, cannabis and marijuana. I have a list of 40 other names, but we can stick to those. Cannabis is actually the technical term, and marijuana became a popular term back in the 30s, kind of as our government wanted to start demonizing the plant and making it seem like a very foreign and dangerous substance. And then there's also hemp, which people can get confused between cannabis and hemp. Hemp has less than 0.3% of THC content in it. So it's mostly all CBD, and we'll get into the differences between THC and CBD in a little bit. But pretty much hemp does not give you that high effect. And it can also have a lot of other very practical uses for it as well. So today we're mostly talking about cannabis and the benefits of using that medically. A real quick history: back in 3000 BC, ancient people from different parts of the world, like Egypt and China, used cannabis for inflammation, pain, and treating nausea. 70 AD, the Romans describe the medical benefits of cannabis in a medical text. Our founding fathers here in this country all grew hemp. In fact, there was a point in our American history where it was illegal not to grow hemp if you had property. And then in the 30s is really when the whole criminalization and reefer madness came into effect here in this country. And then in the 70s, cannabis was listed as a Schedule I drug by the Controlled Substance Act. And that's really did a lot of damage to people wanting to use cannabis medically. That's still an issue to this day, and hopefully we'll see cannabis rescheduled at some point. And then in 1996 is really the start of the whole decriminalization era in this country, when California passed Proposition 215, which legalized medical cannabis. So that was a while ago, but things are still moving fast in many states. So how cannabis works. We have this system in our body, kind of like our nervous system, our digestive system, but this is the endocannabinoid system. And it's an internal system in our body that processes cannabinoids. And cannabinoids we'll talk about too. It's kind of the active ingredients in cannabis. And so it's kind of funny, our body has this endocannabinoid system that works in parallel with cannabis. So it's pretty incredible. And then the more we're finding out about the endocannabinoid system, the more we're realizing all the benefits and effects that it has on our body. And it's something that we're starting to study more of, and people are starting to learn more about that in med school. Cannabinoids enhance and mimic the chemicals that our system actually naturally produces. So in our body, we have these receptors, which you can think of as kind of like locks. And the cannabinoids, the active ingredients in cannabis, are kind of the keys to those locks. Located throughout our body, when activated, these receptors can do things like release serotonin or even reprogram white blood cells to attack inflammation. And so the cannabinoids will come in, and they're better at doing different things and responding from our body than others. And they unlock the receptor functions that are naturally found within our bodies. So in our heads, we have our CB1 receptors, and that's really what the THC cannabinoid connects with. And that's why we have that high effect when we use cannabis with THC in it. And those receptors are in our brain and our spinal cord. And then we also have CB2 receptors, which are mostly found in our immune system and our gastrointestinal tract. And that's where the CBD mostly binds with. And on our skin is kind of interesting. Our skin has both CB1 and CB2 receptors. And that's why we also have topicals that contain THC or CBD from cannabis, and both work really well. And we'll talk about topicals in a little bit too. So our skin has both receptors, and then in our brains, that's where the THC, CB1 receptors are located. So here are a couple of different types of cannabinoids that are found within cannabis. So the kind of the active ingredients. Probably the most well-known is THC. That's what we've known about the longest. And that's what gives people who use cannabis that high after consuming cannabis. But THC kind of gets a bad rep now, where it's kind of known as the fun cannabinoid that people use recreationally. but THC does also have a lot of really great medicinal benefits as well. 10% or 10 milligrams of THC actually equals 60 milligrams of codeine. So when we're looking at using cannabis to treat pain, you can really decrease your intake of pain medication like codeine, substituting it with much lower amounts of THC. THC is also really great at treating nausea and inflammation as well. The other cannabinoid we hear a lot about these days is CBD, and we're still finding out more and more about it. CBD is really great for medicinal use because it doesn't produce that high that we get from THC. And so we can still get the benefits without having to worry about whether or not we can get our work done or do our daily tasks around the house. CBD is great for anti-inflammatory and analgesic, and it reduces our anxiety and it raises our serotonin level to help us relax. And it's actually good for if somebody does consume too much THC and is not enjoying the result of that. You can take CBD to kind of calm your body down and relax if you're feeling like you got too high from taking too much THC. A couple other cannabinoids that we're starting to learn more and more about, CBG and CBN. They don't really they don't naturally grow in high amounts in our plants, but by using different methods to extract those cannabinoids out into concentrates, people are able to focus on those cannabinoids and get the benefits of those. So CBG is very effective as an anti-inflammatory. CBN is extremely effective as a sedation and can be used as a sleep aid. So if we had people coming into our dispensaries just saying they want to be able to sleep better, we go to products that have a high CBN content in them. But again, they're not naturally found with high amounts, typically in flower plants. At my company, INSA, we partnered with the University of Massachusetts and a couple other groups, Cannabis Community Research Network, and we conducted a 2-year IBR-approved research study on medical use of cannabis. Here's one chart that shows what people are using cannabis for. You can really just focus on the red bar. That's kind of the average in Massachusetts where this study took place. And so you can see there's a large number of people who are using medical cannabis to treat chronic pain, followed by anxiety and depression and insomnia. We had a lot of vets who come in that use cannabis for PTSD. So there's a lot of uses that people are finding success using cannabis to treat. The percent of people who took the survey who use medical cannabis to reduce their prescription medication intake. The highest category are people who are not trying to reduce medication. But then followed by that, you can see that there are pretty large numbers of people who are trying to get off opioids and antidepressants, benzos. And so people are having a lot of success. 58% of people in Massachusetts and 71% across the country of medical cannabis patients are using cannabis to reduce prescription medication. And so we know prescription medication typically has a lot of side effects, a lot stronger, a little more toxic for our bodies. And so it's really great that people can use a natural product to replace some of these toxic medications that probably a lot of us on this call are on. This is a chart that I found pretty fascinating. So this is a study that relied on data from patients on Medicaid, or I'm sorry, Medicare Part D. So it's people 65 and older. And this shows the average number of daily doses filled for prescription drugs annually per physician in states that have medical marijuana law compared to states without that medical marijuana law. And so per physician, you can see each physician in states with medical marijuana are, on average, writing close to 2,000 less prescriptions for pain than in states without medical marijuana laws. Even 560 less prescriptions per physician for anxiety, psychosis. So I think we're seeing a lot of success once we pass these laws and doctors are on board with giving medical cannabis a try. Just the fact that one physician can write 2,000 less prescriptions for pain medication is pretty outstanding in my eyes. So what is cannabis used for? In our dispensaries, we saw our patients coming in really for these three things for the most part: pain, anxiety, and insomnia. Pain, CBD, and THC are both really great for pain. CBD is great for the nociceptive pain, and THC is really great for the neuropathic pain. Anxiety, THC is an excellent mood elevator. CBD is really great at calming you down by raising your serotonin levels as well. And then insomnia, one study found about half of people who consumed cannabis 1 to 2 hours before bed had success in sleeping better using cannabis as a sleep aid. And that's really great too, also with pain. As those of us who suffer from chronic pain, we know sleeping can be an issue, and that's typically when that pain kicks in, is at night when you're trying to sleep. And so if we're able to go to bed and fall asleep when we need to, we wake up with less pain, we wake up more rested, and wake up healthier than normal. So when talking about pain, 1 in 4 adults experience pain lasting an entire day. 1 in 10 adults experience pain lasting a year or more. And I think in the hemophilia community, it's probably close to 1 in 1 adults experience pain lasting a year or more. And so it's something that we're all very familiar with, unfortunately, in this community. And the pain really infiltrates all aspects of someone's life. So it's not only our health, it's our mobility, our hobbies, our school, our career, cognitively, socially. So it's really hard living with chronic pain. It's not just like, oh, my shoulder hurts. It's, I can't pick my kids up. I can't go do my yard work and take care of my family like I'm supposed to. And so you don't really want to underestimate pain. It's just, something that you feel in a part of your body that's annoying. There's physiological pain as well. And your body gets to a point when you're living with chronic inflammation. And it goes down to the cellular and tissue level, which leads to receptor changes in your body. Psychologically, when pain lingers, it doesn't go away. And it doesn't go away. We start to see depression and anxiety. So pain really has a huge amount of impact on someone's body outside of just the annoyance of the pain. So for time purposes, I'll try to go through these somewhat quickly, but here are some different ways to consume cannabis. Flower products, edibles, concentrates, and topicals. There's other options out there as well. Here you see some examples of flower and edibles and concentrates and vape pens. So flower is the plant, kind of when you buy just the bud, or people who are used to using cannabis over the last many years, this is what you would typically buy. It's called flower now. It's the bud, it's the plant that is typically smoked. It's sold by weight. You can buy it by grams, 1/8 of an ounce, 1/4 of an ounce, 1/2 ounce, ounces. You can also buy pre-rolls, which are also known as joints a lot of times, and they come in a variety of sizes as well. And that's really good for people who might have arthritis in their hands and just need to light up the pre-roll instead of having to roll it or do anything else in order to consume the product. Edibles. So edibles are effective for several reasons. You don't have to smoke it. So sometimes coughing can exacerbate pain. With edibles, there's no inhalation of smoke or vapor, so it's a little better for your respiratory system. It's also a very discreet way of consuming cannabis. Edibles can be very consistent. So once a patient knows how many milligrams are effective for them, so it is a little bit of trial and error. But once you know how many milligrams you need to reach whatever benefit you're trying to reach, it's much more homogeneous of an experience from one product to another. And edibles are also really great for sleep. And I mentioned before that, when you're in pain, going to sleep can be difficult. So this helps you fall asleep. But edibles also have a longer, consistent effect on your body. So a lot of people will take an edible, and then it not only helps fall asleep, but keeps you asleep. I've heard a lot of stories of some patients who used to just take some medication over the counter that helps them fall asleep, but then they wake up a few hours later wide awake. So with edibles, they help you fall asleep and stay asleep and get good rest throughout the night. And if you're an experienced consumer of cannabis, edibles are also good for daytime use because of that consistent effect that you have. So once you figure out how many milligrams you need to be effective, you can take an edible in the morning and have that consistent relief throughout the day, where compared to, say, smoking, where it's very peak and trough and can be up and down, where edibles is a much longer, consistent effect that you have as a result. But there is, some caution that you need to be careful of when using edibles. They can take a while to kick in, and this can lead to overconsumption and bad experiences. So remember to always start low and go slow. We always recommended that somebody wait at least an hour and a half or 2 hours before consuming more edibles if you're not feeling it. The worst is you don't think you're feeling anything, so you eat more, and then they all kick in at once, and then it's not a very pleasant experience if that's something that you're not used to. So just start low. It is trial and error. Start with 2.5 milligrams or 5 milligrams, see how that goes. And then the next day, make your adjustment if you think you needed more or less, and wait before consuming more, because that's kind of where you can get into trouble. Tinctures have become very popular as well, mostly because they take effect a little bit faster than edibles, because they're absorbed sublingually in your mouth. So they have that long, consistent effect similar to edibles, but it kicks in a little stronger as well. It's also discreet, and you can just put the droplets under your tongue. You can add it to your coffee. You can put it in your food. However you choose to take the tincture are all viable options and will have the same effects for you. And so these are really great also for people who are new to using cannabis. Again, it's no smoke or vapor that you need to inhale, so it's better for your respiratory system as well. Concentrates is another way to consume cannabis. You have to be a little bit more careful with concentrates because they're extremely strong. So the way they're produced is you take the whole plant, the flower, and then you use different methods of extracting those cannabinoids and terpenes from the flower. So some are solventless processes, some use solvents to extract, and you have things like keef, wax, shatter, batter, live sugar, rosin. It's a little healthier when you consume concentrates compared to flower, because any toxins that might be in the plant or any ingredients that you don't need are not in this final product. So you can consume these concentrates, and it's really just the cannabinoids and the terpenes that you're looking to consume, without all the extra kind of junk that might be found in the plant that you don't need. And you can put these on top of flour, or you can use vaporizers or dab rigs to consume these products. But you want to be careful too. This is really more for experienced users or people who might have a higher tolerance on cannabis. While flour, typically really good flour has between like 20, maybe up to 30% THC in it. These concentrates can have up to 98% or higher of THC. So they're very potent. You want to be careful consuming these. Again, similar to edibles, start low, go slow, because they are very strong. But if you are a patient that has a high tolerance, or you really just want to get the cannabinoids and the terpenes out of the product and just consume those, this is a great option as well. So vape pens, they've been in the news a lot this past year or so. Just a note on that, the huge percentage of people getting sick off vape pens were either flavored tobacco vape pens or cannabis vape pens bought from the black market. So vape pens that are purchased from a licensed dispensary are typically, more times than less, very safe for you, because the states can regulate what ingredients you're putting into your oils or your distillate, which is the oil that's typically found inside vape pens. And so I always warn people to be careful if you're getting vape pens from the black market, because you don't know what's in them. And that is what was causing people to get sick. Where if it's from a facility that's licensed, the state has full control over what you're allowed or not allowed to put into your oil that goes into vape pens, which has a very, very, very good track record of not making people sick. And again, similar to concentrates, we extract just that material out of the flower to create the oil that goes into the vape pen. So it's a little bit more pure than what you would get from smoking flower. Vaping is still considered better for your lungs than smoking. It's not something that you want to do huge amounts of every day for sure. But I find these really great for being discreet and powerful. Again, once you learn your dose, you can take a hit or two off of one of these and manage your pain or whatever ailments you're trying to treat pretty effectively without getting yourself in a position where you might be too high or whatever in order to have a productive day. So vape pens are very useful. They're discreet, easy to have on you. And it's also really good at if you're looking for just a particular cannabinoid like CBD or CBN. Different manufacturers can pull those cannabinoids out and offer those in larger amounts in products like this than they can in flower, because flower is just a natural plant. And testing for all legal cannabis products, again, is very, very rigorous with third-party labs that do the testing for licensed dispensaries. Topicals are being used more and more these days, and there's a lot of benefits to topicals. Like we said before, our skin has both the CB1 and CB2 receptors, so both THC and CBD can have benefits in your lotions. So there's lotions, bath bombs, Epsom salts, patches, personal lubricants, pain sticks, all very effective. We offered a THC lotion and a CBD salve. CBD in a topical is very great for treating eczema and different skin ailments that you might have. Where THC topicals are very good at treating localized pain. I had an employee who she broke her neck a couple years ago and had very limited range of motion in her neck and wasn't able to turn her head. and she used some of the THC lotion and had pretty much full range of motion back while the effects lasted. So they are very useful. I don't think it equates to, you know, a high milligram of pain medicine by any means. But if you're having a bleed in one of your joints, a THC lotion certainly has an impact to decrease some of that pain, which can help a lot, especially if you're trying not to use pain medication anymore and you just need some relief. You don't get any psychoactive effect or euphoria from lotion. So there's no high that you will feel by using topicals. So that's another really great reason why a lot of people are using topicals these days as well. Some risks that are involved, about 1 in 10 cannabis consumers become addicted. For people who begin using before the age of 18, that number rises to 1 in 6. And so some signs that you might be addicted include unsuccessful efforts to quit using cannabis, giving up important activities with friends and family in favor of using cannabis, and using cannabis even when it is known that it causes problems fulfilling your everyday jobs at home and school and work. And in terms of addiction, there's certainly a separation between the addiction that you'd get from cannabis and the addiction you get from heroin or cocaine or opioids. It's not that chemical addiction. When I have to go away and not use cannabis for a number of days, I don't get withdrawals. It's not on that same platform in terms of being dependent on the cannabis medication. It's not similar to the addiction that you'd have by some of those other type of drugs that make you chemically dependent on them. You do want to be careful using cannabis under the age of 18. It can cause issues with attention, memory, and learning functions and affect how the brain builds connections between the areas necessary for these functions. So a lot of states do have medical marijuana laws for pediatric use. There's typically some more hoops you have to jump through because it really isn't recommended for people under the age of 18 to use cannabis because your brain is still developing. However, depending on what ailments you're trying to treat and the severity of the illnesses that some of these kids have, there's certainly times where those risks do not outweigh the benefits. So that's just something that you have to work with your physician and your family about, whether or not taking that risk of using cannabis under the age of 18 is worth not using cannabis and what you have to deal with on that front. So some risks include getting too high and having anxiety and paranoia. Smoking isn't obviously great for your lungs and your cardiovascular systems. State legality. So there's still states where it's illegal, so that's a big risk. That includes traveling from state to state. You're not allowed to travel even from one legal state to another legal state with cannabis. So you can still get in trouble even if you got it legally from your dispensary. You're still not legally allowed to cross borders. There are some states just now starting to look at that and making some changes. But every state has different laws. So you have to be very careful in terms of traveling to new states and whether or not your state that you live in has medical or recreational cannabis laws as well. And then, of course, drug testing for work. If your work drug tests, that could be an issue. And I've seen that end up a couple different ways. So it's just an unknown. Some employers are a little tougher to work with than other employers. So you want to be careful if your company drug tests and you're using even legally prescribed medical cannabis. And so we've heard over the decades that cannabis is a gateway drug. according to the CDC, the majority of people who use marijuana do not go on to use other harder substances. And it's also, I think, fair to point out that there's been 0 overdoses from cannabis use. So if you're thinking of using cannabis, you want to think about, what you're trying to treat. Are you treating pain, insomnia, depression? How do you want to feel? More awake, calm, happy, relaxed, motivated? And then as you try things, figure out what's worked. Is the flower better, or the topicals? Is this strain of flower better than this other strain of flower? And so once you start asking yourself these questions, you can go to a medical dispensary, and if it's a good one, they'll have employees there that are well trained to work with you to figure out what products would be best for you. And so how to get a medical card. Each state has different rules and regulations, so it's kind of hard to go over this. Here's a map of showing, what states are at what point in the process. This was, I believe, as of July of this year. So there are still some states where it's fully illegal, and then there's some states on the opposite end of the spectrum where it's fully legalized recreationally and medicinally. So that's why, again, you have to be careful traveling state to state, as it's typically illegal to bring cannabis over state lines. The typical process of getting a medical marijuana card is you have to go to a doctor that's typically certified by the state to approve patients for medical marijuana. And you go, and most states then require the physician to fill out a form and send it to the state. Typically, you have to pay that doctor and then also pay the state a certain fee in order to get your medical card. And then if it's approved, some states are harder than others. Some states have a list of ailments that are approved or illnesses that are approved, and some states don't. You'll see some states that won't have chronic pain as an ailment that it allows you to get a medical card. And I think that's because they think it might be abused a little easier, where if you have a specific diagnosis, they know it's not being abused. But luckily, a lot of states are now including chronic pain. There's some states, I believe New York, are doing really great things where if you have a prescription for an opioid or other pain meds, that qualifies you automatically for the medical marijuana program. So you really just have to research what state you're in and what the requirements are in your particular state. So now this is more or less my experience using cannabis. Again, I'm not a medical professional. This is just my story and how medical cannabis has helped me. 40 years old, I have severe hemophilia A, pretty uncontrolled bleeds, and severe arthritis in 6 different joints. And I was on pain meds for almost 20 years. I think my arthritis is as bad as it is. I can't straighten either arm. My ankles are shot. My shoulder is a shot. When I was in high school, a shoulder doc looked at my x-ray of my shoulder and thought I was an 80-year-old man who played tennis his whole life. I think one of the reasons why my joints are so bad is when I was, I guess, in elementary school, my parents found out I contracted HIV through my factor medication. And so I think they really didn't want to push more problems on me. And so I would go a month without infusing, and I started hiding my bleeds. I feel like nobody really explained to me that each bleed was creating permanent damage to my joints. And I think if I had known that, I might have been a little bit more compliant. But my parents were told I had a year to live, so they probably figured why, get on his case about infusing at that point. And so I ended up getting really bad joints to this day. Every time I went to exercise or go to the gym, I found myself creating another target joint. And it wore on me. You know, I got depressed. I have, you know, bad body image, depression from that at times. And it just got really hard to try to make improvements to my body without creating more damage. So I knew I wanted to try something else. So growing up, I never had pain meds. I had Tylenol once in a while that, you know, didn't really do much for any type of severe bleeding that I had. In college, I tried OxyContin for the first time and got a prescription for those, and they made me feel good. And, you know, I helped contain the pain. And I was on OxyContin for a long period of time for extended relief, and morphine sulfate for immediate relief. And then I'd also, you know, my tolerance would change, and I would try a different drug and increase the milligrams of those drugs. I was on OxyContin, oxycodone, hydromorphone, methadone, Celebrex, lidocaine, Vioxx, probably others as well. And I just hated the fact that I had to keep increasing my pain meds in order for them, at a point, hardly even work at all. And I found myself for years and years just taking these pain meds so I wouldn't get withdrawals. And I hated it, and I wanted to get off them. I tried several times to get off my pain meds without much luck. Here are some of the side effects that I had from my pain meds: hard to focus, poor quality of sleep. I think it's similar to when you drink alcohol before bed. It affects your REM sleep. And so while you might sleep those 8 hours, it's really not quality sleep because you never enter that REM state, because your body's fighting the toxins in your body and not really resting. And I think that led to memory issues that I had. I had a bad bladder. Emotionally, it wasn't good. You know, your brain forgets how to produce the chemical that produces your emotions. And I got major fatigue. I was falling asleep while driving and falling asleep at work. The withdrawals were horrible. I'd have to wake up in the middle of the night to take my medicine, so I didn't have withdrawals. I always had to have it on me. I'd freak out if I left the house, realizing I didn't put a pill or two in my pocket for later. I had stomach issues, sweating, night sweats. Again, it didn't really help with the pain. I'd quickly tolerize and have to increase my dose, decrease libido, more pain and more bleeds, which I'll get into in a minute. Exercising gave me more bleeds. I was being studied for narcolepsy. When I got off my pain meds, I got so much more energy back and able to work till late in the morning, off less sleep, and I was doing much better. I still have withdrawals symptoms when I try other medication now, so it's affected how I'm able to use other medications as well, itchiness, sedation. So pain meds really did a good amount of damage to my body. And so quitting was one of the hardest things I ever tried. And it took me almost 10 years and a few different tries. The withdrawals are just intense: chills, restless legs, unable to sleep, muscle tightness, night sweats. I still get a lot of those off and on now. And it was easy to relapse because I knew, well, if I just took one of these pills, I could get rid of all these withdrawals. And so mentally, it was really hard to figure out what my goal was and to stick to that goal. I think getting off my pain meds, I had the most success using cannabis. One thing I didn't explain earlier, when you're looking at products to buy, typically in a dispensary, most are THC products that you can buy, but then you can get CBD products with a ratio of THC. So you can get 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 20-to-1, where it's 1 part CBD to 1 part THC, or 2 parts CBD to 1 part THC, or 20 parts CBD to 1 part THC. So that decreases the euphoria effect that you have on the THC, and improves the benefits that you can have from the CBD. And you can think of kind of like in the bleeding disorders world, we need von Willebrand's factor as kind of that taxi cab that brings our factor 8 or factor 9 to the site of the bleeding. Well, with cannabis, CBD needs some THC to activate the CBD. So a lot of these CBD products that you can buy online or at gas stations, for one, I don't recommend doing that without any strong research on the product, because they're not legally mandated to be tested in most states. And an internal study found most of them had a completely different amount of milligrams of CBD than what was labeled on the product. So be careful buying any type of CBD products in gas stations or online, unless you've done some research on that brand. Most coming out of Colorado are effective because they have laws in that state regulating how CBD is sold and labeled. But in terms of using these 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 20-to-1 CBD products, you get a lot of medicinal effect without having that euphoria from the THC. And that is where I found most of my success, because it not only helped me decrease the withdrawals and side effects that I was having from getting off of the pain meds, but it also had a great amount of benefits on my body. And again, you always want to work with a doctor. So when I exercise now, I'm able to, what I do is I'll smoke some CBD, some like 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 CBD flower. For some reason, there's something called the entourage effect, where when you use the flower, it's the cannabinoids and the terpenes that are all working together, which typically have a better response than when you are just using part of the plant. So I started to smoke CBD, THC 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 flower prior to exercising, and then a little bit again after exercising. And that's where I found most of my success, where then I was able to exercise without creating more bleeds for the first time in my life. And it was really life-changing. So I then was able to strengthen my muscles around my joints and decrease the amount of bleeding that I had. And I actually went from having at least one bleed a week, sometimes 2, 3, to now having maybe 2 or 3 bleeds a month or less, which was huge in my book. And I'm now able to exercise an hour or more without creating more bleeds on my body for the first time in my life. And so switching off the pain meds, I didn't realize all those side effects I had from my pain meds until after I got off them, and all those things started going away, and realizing, you know, all the damage that was done to my body. I remember going to a pharma advisory board meeting once, and they had people go into different groups. If you had 1 bleed, 2 bleeds, 3 bleeds, 4 bleeds. And I was like, is this a week? And they were like, no, it's per year. And that's when it kind of clicked for me, like, well, something's not right here. I had several inhibitor tests done trying to figure out why I was bleeding so much. And I had an inhibitor when I was younger. I don't now. So that's kind of just an example of how many bleeds I had while on pain meds. I'm not saying pain meds cause those bleeding issues. I wasn't compliant as a kid, as I mentioned before. But the decrease in bleeds, I have to believe the pain meds were making things worse on my body. And so since being able to switch from pain meds to just using cannabis, I had the less bleeds. And I was able to go from every other day to now like every 3 days to infusing. which, saves a lot of money, which I'm happy about. Again, I'm able to exercise really for the first time in my life, where every other attempt I failed and kept creating more target joints. And it also helps mentally. So my self-confidence has went up. I don't have as many body image issues as I used to. I lost about 25 pounds. But I should say you do have to be careful when using cannabis because the munchies can't take over. So you have to make sure that if you are using cannabis to get healthier, you aren't giving into that sensation of wanting to eat everything in sight. So hide the Cheetos when consuming cannabis. But I've had fewer bleeds, less pain, stronger muscles, stronger joints. And it's really changed my life. Some other benefits when I started just using cannabis, I sleep through the whole night now without having to get up to take medicine. I don't fall asleep behind the wheel anymore. I don't freak out if I leave the house without my pills. I don't need to drive to my doctor's to pick up the script, to drop it off at the pharmacy, and then go back and pick it up, and then do that again 27 days later, and hope the doctor's around to write my prescription so I don't have any gap and have to have withdrawals. And I think some of the pain meds, they not only numb the pain in your body, but they affect your mind too. And so I did have some difficulty when I was finally able to get off on my pain meds, because it was the first time as an adult, because I've been on pain meds since college, that I was facing some of the trauma that I had throughout my life, that I never dealt with because I was just numbing my mind through the pain meds. And so, I had the HIV issues that I had to deal with, survivor's guilt. Many of my friends passed away when I was younger, feeling of being alone. And so a lot of these things that I hadn't had to deal with before, for better or worse, I have to deal with now. And it's gotten a lot better. So it's just an example of some of the different ways that pain meds can affect you mentally as well. So cannabis versus pain meds. Everyone's chart might be different, but these are some of the benefits, comparisons that I found with cannabis. It's typically not addicting in terms of your chemical dependency on the plant, but it is still illegal federally and in some states, but it's natural. Where in pain meds, it's very chemical. With pain meds, you're able to legally travel from state to state, and they are extremely addicting though compared to cannabis. With cannabis, I found little change in tolerance. Some people do get some tolerance changes with cannabis, but nowhere near to the degree that I found with pain meds. Cannabis though is expensive because it's not covered by your health insurance. So believe it or not, pain meds for your out-of-pocket expenses is typically a lot cheaper. Very little side effects to no side effects from cannabis, endless side effects for pain meds, 0 overdoses in cannabis. With pain meds, every day, more than 130 people in the United States die of overdosing on opioids, according to the CDC. Cannabis, you get the munchies. Pain meds, you get itchy. So a quick recap, again, that this was just my story. I'm not a doctor or a researcher. In my case, I think pain meds did more damage than good in my life. But that's not the case for everyone. And if pain meds are helping you, then that's great. Keep working with your doctor in terms of whatever helps you be successful in life. But I wanted to share my side effects because I didn't really even know I had those side effects. So keep your eye out for those and how they're affecting your body. And again, as you've probably heard throughout this whole conference, treating pain is really a multifaceted approach. So I'm not saying just use cannabis and you're going to be great. Whether it's also using medication, yoga, dieting. I think everybody agrees that exercise is one of the best things you can do for your body, whether you have hemophilia or not, but especially if you have hemophilia or another bleeding disorder. And cannabis is what allowed me for the first time in my life to exercise successfully for the first time. So, work with your doctor, figure out what the best approach is, what different tools you can use, and just have cannabis as one of those options that you look at. And hopefully you'll have some success like I did. And that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you so much for joining us for this presentation on the use of medical cannabis and pain management alternative therapies to that. I want to say a huge thank you to Mark for sharing his insights and his understanding and deep knowledge of this particular topic, and also just from his experience as a person living with a bleeding disorder. It's not easy, and so you do a great job, Mark. We really appreciate you. Hey, look, if you'd like more information on this, and this is something that you'd like to discover more of, please feel free to reach out to us at hopeforhemophilia.org, or you can even call our offices at 888-529-8023. You can also email us at events@hope-charities.org, and we would love to be able to help you in any way we can. You can apprise yourself of multiple programs that we offer, including financial assistance. We offer resources, helping you get connected to the different kinds of resources that you may need in the community, as well as beyond just the hemophilia community. And we also help you to be able to get the encouragement, hopefully, and inspiration you need to be able to keep going. So we'd love to get to know you better and invite you to our next live event, and hope that you can be with us. So hope you enjoyed this video, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.